I would like to go a little bit back to basics and remind about sustainable development. You already know a lot about this, but my point is about importance of three things we need to remember about needs, ability, and time. And what is interesting in the definition of sustainable development, it's all about time and future generations. And you will be surprised how actually the United Nations decided to address future generations. An idea is originally from Aboriginal people because they speak mostly about future generations. But after United Nations took idea from indigenous people, somehow in communication this very important point was slightly missed, and it brings us less understanding about time frame for sustainable development. I was really lucky to take part in some activities with indigenous people in different parts of the world, and during my visiting professor scholarship at University of California at Berkeley, I also had opportunity to participate in some events by indigenous people on Kauai, Hawaii, where a National Tropical Botanical Garden of the US is located, and they do a lot of work with indigenous people. So my point was about time, and I was wondering how they understand the next 7 generations, because time frame is very important for us. And indigenous people say that it's not merely social, economical, or environmental concept, it's more about spirituality. And you know, somehow we are missing spirituality point in our discussion about sustainability. And without spirituality, sustainability doesn't really work. In some cases, many organizations understand it as replacement for environmental management, for example, if they speak about environmental sustainability. And speaking about time frame of definition about future generations, I would like to say that it's no unique consensus even among indigenous people itself. Sometimes some of them understand 7 future generations starting from this one. And some groups say that it's about 7 generations in general, starting with great-grandparents and going for unborn of unborn of unborn. And you know, if you look at sustainability management perspective through the lens of this concept, it's totally different approach. Unfortunately, even in Ontario, coordination of work with indigenous people, it's not very easy. And I learned about examples how ministries tried to do really best, but achieved just opposite. For example, one ministry of Ontario started to take care about water infrastructure in indigenous communities. You probably know that government tender, it's a very complicated process, and sometimes one organization applies and gets it, but another implements as contractor. So in the end, they somehow hired contractors who is doing work in north, but don't care about philosophy of indigenous people. So what happened? This contractor created very nice water infrastructure, but indigenous people never use it. After ministry sent some audits to review what happened with this water infrastructure, they learned that local people say we cannot use water infrastructure because it's dead. So they asked, what do you mean by dead? It's something wrong. We probably need to bring health department here. So they did even more different kind of investigation, and still were wondering why indigenous people don't use water. By the end of the day, they finally learned that it's not about health concerns, it's about spirit. Because in indigenous people culture, water also has spirit. And people pray to the spirit of water before they drink it. And also women are responsible to keep good association with this spirit. It's also gender-based issue after all, because most of construction people and the contractors were men in big yellow boots who never cared to speak to women in local communities, and they never discovered that actually women in local tradition by indigenous people are responsible for this water infrastructure. And another issue they had with local community, contractors asked, can they test this system? They say, we can use it if it's good enough for next 50 years for our children. And contractors say, we never provide such guarantee. It's usually like 1 year or even less. We cannot guarantee. And you know, it's different world perception. And this spiritual component is completely missed in our sustainability management discussion. If we don't take time perspective from spiritual point of view, you know, it's lost. We speak about future generations, but we don't necessarily understand what even definition by the United Nations means about future generation. Because this concept is from Aboriginal people. And if you think about your elders, and if you think about unborn children, it's slightly different concept. And taking from this, I would like also remind some other definitions about sustainability. You may find not only sustainability, sustainable development, but also triple bottom line. Today we learned about 5 Ps, and people, planets, profit, it's 3 Ps widely used in the past. And you may also find that people speak about environmental, social, and corporate governance, but they also mean sustainability. On one side, it's good that so many people are involved in sustainable development and they bring something to the table. On another side, it creates some confusion. In science, we know if we cannot agree on definition, it's very difficult to discuss this specific subject. And in our case, a broad understanding of sustainability somehow damages our approach. Nevertheless, I really hope that all definitions will help us to progress. And just to be on the same page, I would like to remind some of them. So, if we speak about sustainable solutions, we usually speak about social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. And social sustainability is a process for creating sustainable, successful places that promotes well-being by understanding what people need from the places they live and work. And you know, we don't always care how we live, how we work, how we are overstressed on our work, and what really work means in our daily lives for us, for our families, and for our children. And here it's a good point to focus on wider understanding of sustainability connected to our home. You know, we can make very good associations with global goals, but at the same time, if we don't care about ground issues, it's very difficult to progress. The same story is about environmental sustainability. And here is very important that environment can be able to produce indefinitely resources for us. It's very hard to achieve unless we apply different lifestyle. And we see more and more trends in lifestyle, and usually new as lifestyle of voluntary simplicity and lifestyles of health and sustainability. And sometimes it's honestly just greenwashing by some businesses, because they call green almost everything. But if they apply real certification process, and you know that it's serious organization doing audit for them, you can trust. I will not look just for something green, but I will definitely look in supermarket for something that has strong association with specific certification project or process and sign of this certification, so I know that this business cares about environment, cares about people, cares about economical issue. You probably remember a huge scandal about retail process in Bangladesh. We all probably received some kind of clothes from this country, and people work there just for $1 or less. And in our case, we often just care just to buy something as cheap as possible. It looks great, but people don't think about all costs. And the same story is not only about our clothes, it's about our economics. Going back again to discussion with Heather during break, we spoke about nuclear energy, also here in this country. Because I was born in Ukraine and lived not far from Chernobyl disaster, I will say we never properly calculated all costs of nuclear energy. And especially here, living in Toronto, near two largest nuclear power point stations in North America, we should really care about things that are going around. And economic sustainability should include whole life cycle analysis. In case of nuclear energy, nobody ever calculated costs of nuclear waste management. Because at the time they started with nuclear energy, no waste was produced yet. It's logical. So if we think about all factors contributing to this, I would also calculate emergency measures and activities involved in this and other factors. And speaking about all three components, I also would like to say that spiritual is a very important one. And I am very glad to introduce one of non-profit organization, the Roots Collaborative, that started at the Center of Social Innovation in Toronto with young people. Some of them are students from Sustainability Management program at Ryerson University, some attended University of Toronto. And I saw first time, at least in Toronto, that somebody seriously cares not only about economic, social, environmental parts, but also includes the spiritual parts in their work. And you will be surprised, many organizations are really looking for spiritual component, but they understand it as health support, sometimes even mental health support. Because, you know, if people are overstressed, overworked, they are not efficient. They create more conflicts with each other. They are not produced at the rate is expected from them. And they look for different techniques like meditation or yoga or something else. So it's quite interesting how spiritual component can be introduced in this. And this is a new initiative. It's like startup right now. But I believe some of you might be interested to see people at Center of Social Innovation that does a lot for sustainability development on grassroots level here in Toronto. And it's a good initiative to join. Going back to our topic, I would like to remind about Millennium Development Goals. You already learned from Ravi about Millennium Development Goals, but I would like to speak from my personal experience working with Millennium Development Goals in Ukraine. I strongly agree with Ravi that it was pure UN-centric approach to address Millennium Development Goals. Management even asked all employees in regions to memorize Millennium Development Goals. Well, on some extent it was helpful because we still need to speak with people doing work on ground and working with projects, but at the same time some kind of formality was introduced at that moment. And if we look at goal 7, ensure environmental sustainability, this is where some confusion about social and economic sustainability started. Because social and economic sustainability was overlooked in other goals. People believed that sustainability is down just to one goal, environmental sustainability, but in this case it just replaced good environmental management. It's not about sustainability. Sustainability is at least 3, 4, or 5 pillars we have in our classical definition. And Millennium Development Goals completely fulfill their role trying to introduce world to the need to change. And you know, we are all agents of change. Some of us trying to change this world for the best, but sometimes, you know, people change it for the worse. And it's important for you to recognize that sustainability development clubs at this university, at other places, are offering you opportunity to become a real agent of change, hopefully for the best. And in this case, you can implement all sustainability development goals, showing that you really care. And going to sustainability development goals, I would like to try give you very short overview. I hope it works with video, because it's very good one. How to make it short in 3 minutes. Yeah, I guess it's the same issue with sound. Let's see if I can. No, it's not no sound, but if you see this presentation later, you can check definitely for different options, and people show how they introduce sustainable development goals everywhere, and they speak about major goals. My focus will be not only on sustainable development goals and 106 targets that you already learned from Ravi, but also about 241 proposed indicators. And indicators play a very important role because they help us to find this grassroots connection with our work and global goals. And surprisingly enough, it's not final number of indicators, because this is just third meeting of special group developing indicators, and I saw even more. So at this moment, it's more coming on the next meeting in October. Let's speak about specific goals and our implication for them in Toronto. Usually we speak about someone who lives on less than $1.25 a day. At the same time, it could be totally different number here in Toronto. And to understand this, we should really check some reports, for example, from Toronto Foundation, going to the ground and discover how we can work with no poverty goal in our case. At the moment, Toronto is famous for its lifestyle, but this lifestyle is unfortunately not for everyone. And we have huge gap between the richest 1% and other population. And it's second biggest gap in Canada. So, we couldn't believe, but a number of people are suffering from poverty here in Toronto. And sometimes they don't receive proper support. On one side, we see a number of people on the streets because they have no resources to survive. On another side, we learned that just one reparature of special housing for people in need of housing may cost up to $5 million. So some countries already calculated all costs they need to spend to satisfy social needs, and we see more and more discussion about minimum incomes in some countries. I don't know if it's good or bad, but you know, if let's say we have housing for people living on the street and it costs the state almost like $10 million a year in exploitation costs and only like 70 people use it, it's probably much better to give opportunity for this group of people to find proper job or support them in some other way, so they don't necessarily spend so much of our budget. Sometimes we don't recognize how much this person lying on the street costs for our budget. One of my friends organized a conference, and they have issue with a person from the street who came and lost conscious. He was drunk, and so of course organizers called 911. So you know how it works. You usually get police, fire department, and ambulance. And organizer asked, what is actually cost of this call for the state? At least $10,000. And this person is in such conditions probably at least one time a week. So poor people on the street cost the budget much more than somebody sitting in this room and working full day. And it's good to find balance between needs of community, misuse of resources by the state, and real situation. You know, if we calculate all costs of social, environmental, and economical issues, and if we also speak about spiritual component, about mental health issue, it's very good to discover how, let's say, even democratic changes can affect our situation with poor people. Many years ago, Canada adopted a human rights declaration, and it was no force to treat people with mental illness anymore. On one side, it's really good because it gives freedom for everyone. On another side, we see really epidemic of mental health issue also in Toronto. And people on the streets sometimes also suffer from this. And they never want to change their situation, no matter how you really care for the situation. So we really need complex approach to address everything. My next slide is about goal ending hunger. And again, we believe that everybody in Toronto has enough food for every day. Yes, it's not only issue of the third world, but I don't really like this definition. What does it mean, first, second, third world? Who created this? Why somebody has authority to decide your gradation. It's like first, second, and third class on the train. You decide buying tickets, and here somebody else decided for you. But it's problem not only for the third world countries. Even in Canada, you will find people living below minimum income and people who really don't know where to spend their money. And addressing food security issues, I would like to remind that median income of low-income families in Toronto is quite low. It's just below $15,000 before taxes. It's of course subject to taxation, even in this case. And during my work at Ryerson University, I also had opportunity to teach a food security policy course, and I looked for statistics of users, food bank users, and this is huge number. It's almost 900,000 people. What does it mean? 9,100 people. It's basically almost second or third person in this town, in this city, needs food bank support. But you know, many people will never use food bank even in need, because it's an issue with dignity. You need to go there and register with your documents. You need to explain something about you and your family. And after all, you need to carry something that you will probably never buy in supermarket if you have choice. And in many cases, food security is affected by our understanding how we can contribute to society. Some people believe that they spend a little bit during Christmas time and it helps. Yes, food banks are full during Christmas time, but they often have nothing to produce and give to people during, let's say, summertime. At the same time, you will see that almost every supermarket in this country will throw out a lot of food, really good food, every single day. Every single day. Because it helps to keep prices high. And they have no opportunity, it's actually prohibited, to give this food to food banks because of, you will be surprised, health concern. Somebody is concerned that this food is not good enough for people really needing this food. So it's very strange, but people starving is probably better people than people eating, let's say, one day before expiration food. And expiration data is also a good question to discuss. I lived in Germany for 3 years. And I visited very nice local organic supermarket. I would not necessarily afford as a student at that time, but they offered excellent food 2 weeks before expiration, 50% less. In many Canadian supermarkets, if you find discount 20-25% on the day of expiration, it's probably your lucky day. And it's very surprising how everything regulated. So, you know, we spend 40% of our food in waste in North America, 40%. And why almost 900,000 people in the city need to look for food in food banks every day? You know, it's not very usual case that we discuss food security here in Toronto, but it's true, it's a big issue. It's even worse for people outside Toronto. During my work at Ryerson, I also completed grant from Aboriginal Educational Council, and we investigated food security issues for people living in North. I also had opportunity to visit Arctic 2014 conference in Ottawa, where large groups from North discussed how they suffer from food issues. Something that costs, let's say, $2 in Toronto costs 25, 45, or even more dollars there. Because it's all about transportation, all about other things, but they are able to produce a lot of food locally. Well, it's probably not good for agriculture for some reason, but what about fish and some other sources? And food security is a really serious issue for indigenous people, and even United Nations criticized Canada for poor care about indigenous people food security. Again, we don't hear a lot about this topic, but it addresses how we can care about food security goals very close to our home. Another topic is about good health, and good health affects everybody and our daily life. And what you see on this slide and other slides, it's like goal number 3. 3.1 is a specific another topic, and 3.11 it's indicator. But I just give you sample. You will find 241 indicators. It's at least 10 different indicators for every single goal. And here, you will be also surprised that it's not so easy in Toronto. Toronto is a great city, and definitely many of us enjoy excellent infrastructures with many parks. Toronto Island offers almost South Beach style living, and there are other great opportunities. But you know how difficult to get access to your doctor. At the time I moved from North York to Etobicoke with my family, we were on waiting list for a local community health center for 2 years. And my son was just 1.5 at that moment. At the time he had some issue, we need to call ambulance or go to the hospital. It means that cost of this care were enormous. And if we had opportunity to access family doctor in front of us, it will be much, much easier. But it never happened, because waiting list is impressive. And as you know, many foreign doctors who immigrated to Canada, because they are doctors, they are driving taxis in this country. And it's big, big issue, and still we suffer from something that should be not an issue in such nice country and city. How air pollution can kill almost 1,300 people? How? It's not China, where you cannot see another person in front of you. It's very nice air, I will say, but it's still a serious problem. And we have a number of issues, and it's not properly addressed. So if we decide to do something for sustainable development goals in our backyard, it's a good place to start. Because we all need to improve health care for everybody in this city. Goal number 4 address even more interesting topic. It's all about education. And I know most of you probably educated in this city and attend this university because it's close to your home. You know, I was born in Ukraine, and actually in the former Soviet Union at that time. I couldn't say that it was easy time, but you know, if we look for maternity leave and care and children care, it's huge difference. You know, you will be surprised, but right now in Ukraine, very poor country suffering from war, maternity leave is 3 years paid for mother and 3 more years unpaid if she decided to stay home, but 3 more years recorded for her retirement. You know, it's huge difference. And here my wife was basically forced to start work at the time our child was still very young, because it was not enough sources for our family. And we discovered that the younger child, the more you spend for your child care. And in downtown Toronto, you can easily spend $2,500 per month, absolutely easily. The younger child, especially at 1 year age, it costs enormous, because they need more staff members to take care about this group. And I'm wondering how we can speak about gender equality, how we can speak about sustainable development if women are forced to leave 1-year-old child and go to work without knowing they even have childcare space. You know, we put the name of our child on waiting list at the time he was born, and it was late. We spent 1 year and more than 6 months waiting for childcare space. And it's not something specific, because in such situations are many people in this town, and at least 13,000 children need child care. You know, most of you are young people, and you are looking for a bright future, and you expect to start family. But you know, it's shockingly difficult here. I was so surprised. Such a rich country, such rich city, and less than 20% of newborn will have actually real space in childcare. And childcare doesn't guarantee that you have no problems with your child, because it's crowded, it's challenging, and child education starts here at 4. But you know, calculation of children age is again different from different countries. So you will find in the same group people who are, children who are 3 years old and almost 5 years old, because if they are born in January, in the end of the year, in December, they still support to start education in the same year. And it's a really hot topic for me right now, because my son just went to junior kindergarten, and what we can see, small group of junior kindergarten students, about 15, are sitting together with 15 students from senior kindergarten, and another corner has another group of 15 students or more. And we have like 2 people working in a room. One is teacher, another is supervisor. They say it's not enough money in this country to pay teachers, to provide proper education. At the same time, we met people who invited us to join advisory council at school, and some of them mentioned how much reparature of small piece at this school cost. Okay, they did something with deck, we saw it, but it cost $500,000. And I don't know why we spent a lot of capital cost and not invest in people, in human capital. And our children deserve more at this moment. Because if you waste opportunity to improve their life in early stage, you will deal with adults who suffer from mental issue, from drugs, from other things. And yes, teachers also say they suffer from this situation because all young children at this age, I'm still wondering why we're supposed to start so early, run around. For example, Quebec starts at 5 years. In Ukraine, I started personally at 7 years. And if I would attend childcare until 7 years, I would have opportunity to sleep at childcare during the day and still get some support. And my child miss a lot sleep during the night because he had nap at childcare before, but right now it's school education with almost 45 people in the room, and I don't know. It's really good topic to address, and you don't need to go to Africa or other countries to find some issues that affect our lives on daily basis. Goal number 5 is about gender equality, and yes, Canada achieved a lot. I will say that we see that women in power have positions everywhere, and it gives variety that we cannot see in other parts of the world. At the same time, it's still difficult to get more female executives in private business, because, you know, white men in business suits still prefer to play golf together, and sometimes networking is not about gender balance kind of networking, and people are excluded from other options. And what is interesting, women have less opportunities to fund new enterprises. Comparing to other countries, especially Scandinavian countries, it's relatively small potential. We also see a lot of crime gender-based, and it's not always good to ignore this issue. Number 6 is about clean water sanitation. At the time I prepared this presentation, I was sure I will never find example for good water and sanitation issue in Toronto. Because from my point of view, water infrastructure is almost perfect, and it's not to compare with African countries where you need to walk like 5 kilometers to get just a little bit water for your everyday needs, and do this every day. But you will be surprised, we still have number of issues with our water, and tests of drinking water show dangerous level of lead in about 15% of samples. So it's huge amount. You know, how many of you know that you can test for free your water for lead? Can you raise? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, less than 10 people, but it's good. Okay. Yeah, no problem. It's good to wake up. Well, I wish it was sound of water, but you know, it's okay. And another issue, how we clean our water. Sometimes we don't recognize that many indicators are not properly measured. Do you know statistics how many antibiotics you have in your water? But you know, it's almost closed system, and many of us unfortunately use some medicine from time to time, and by the end of the day it also affects our ecosystem. And almost no filters can clean our water from antibiotics. And there are some other issues why we still need to care about proper water solution in this city. Goal number 7 is about energy. I already started to address some concerns related to nuclear energy in Toronto. I took part in public hearings on Darlington Nuclear Power Station together with Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And one of the young persons really surprised everyone in that room, because she started to say she lives in this city for almost 20 years, and somehow she never learned that we have 2 large nuclear power stations near Toronto. And this kind of hearings attracted about I would say 200 people, and around 25 of them were from Toronto. It shows that people don't necessarily care about this issue, and this is how government sees this situation. If you don't write letter, if you don't ask your member of parliament about this issue, everybody is safe. But you know, how many of you already received iodine for prophylaxis in case of nuclear emergency? Okay, 3 people, 4? Yeah. Last November, I attended hearings at City of Toronto, City Hall, and it was a huge surprise to discover that this initiative is hardly known for people living here. But what is also interesting, it was another surprise. Toronto already has very good emergency planning, but not necessarily for nuclear accidents. And we are so close that nuclear accident can create a lot of challenge in this city. I found very interesting study from one of the University of Toronto students showing that this city can be evacuated in 5 or 6 hours by public transportation. Well, every time I take TTC, I am really doubt it needs 5 or 6 hours. But you know, it shows how we are really unprepared of major disaster. It's not only about nuclear accidents. But in case of energy, it's really good to have some kind of alternatives. And going to alternatives, I would say that people sometimes blame renewable energy for higher cost on their bill. Well, renewable energy has very transparent pricing. If we compare with nuclear energy, it's not necessarily has full transparent pricing for whole life cycle. And we basically compare totally wrong things. How we can compare someone who open and provides everything to you with someone who probably shows very little. And only 1% of risks we have from nuclear energy can be insured here in Canada. Everything else is the government responsibility. And we should really ask why. Because the government responsibility automatically means it's our taxes. And you should think twice. And if you have opportunity, please introduce green energy implementation in your neighborhood, support it, and it's definitely change world to the better. Goal 8 about economic growth, employment, and decent work. I really like this definition, decent work. What is decent work from your point of view? It's something that pays your daily bill and nothing more? Or it's decent work that allows you at least take family vacation? Or it's decent work that allows you to think about future generation and probably buy a house without being in debt for next future generation? You know, it's a very complicated topic, and thinking about economic growth in Canada, I was still surprised to discover that unemployment rate is pretty high. And addressing these statistics, I will say it's not complete statistics. Because to be registered as unemployed in Toronto, you need to work before and have enough hours to be insured on employment insurance. If you are not properly insured before, you are not necessarily unemployed. You will get different kind of benefits, social assistance. But it doesn't show proper statistics that you are unemployed. So to be employed, you need to be registered as unemployed, you should be properly employed at least for half a year before. And you know, this number should be totally different. And every time I am at Pearson Airport, I see crowd of new arrivals. And many of them are newcomers to Canada. And most of them are unemployed during the first year at least. And very often it's not reflected in this statistic. Because somebody who in this country less than 6 months, they cannot even apply for social assistance benefits. If they are less than 3 months, they cannot apply for health care. But they walk with you on the same street, they use the same TTC, and they also have some health issues. So another huge problem we face in Toronto is about temporary employment and precarious employment. What does it mean in our life? I will use again example from my family. My wife working as a manager for fundraising campaigns in one large non-profit organization in downtown Toronto. She has no benefits, she has no health insurance, nothing from employment, because this is contract position. And precarious employment is about contract position. Even at universities, we see more and more contract position for 1 semester, for 1 year, and it's changed whole environment. And in case of my wife, we cannot properly provide care for our child because there are a few things that are uninsured. Let's say we would like to use chiropractor, but it's not insured. Or sometimes we can use our private insurance, but it covers just $25 of each visit, but visits start at least like $50 or $60. And it's definitely big issue, and many of you will start work after you complete this university or much earlier, and you will discover that something doesn't match our nice picture about already well-developed country. You know, it's not safe to live in large city without medical benefits. Of course, many benefits in Canada are covered by OHIP, but not everything. For example, emergency call is not covered properly, so you still need to pay. And it's not only Canadian issue, it's a number of similar concerns in Germany and other countries, especially senior people are afraid to call 911 because they will be charged. And if somebody decides that call is not appropriate, it's not like $45 extra payment. It can be a full payment, $850 or more for your visit. It's good to know. And you know, your doctor who sees you in hospital is not only your health care provider, he is also, or she is, your judge, because they can say, you know, you can take taxi. And this is also affected situation at the time my wife delivered our child. In Ukraine or in post-Soviet countries, women have opportunity to start their pre-care in special child care department like week before delivery date. And they stay another week after delivery. here we were told that we're supposed to go to the hospital only in the case it's really right now. And if you go to hospital, you will see number of pregnant women walking around. It's not necessarily they really enjoy walking around, but it means they arrived a little bit earlier. And you cannot judge how early or late it is. So at the time, my wife told me like at 3 in the night, it's probably time. She said, we learned it may take another 24 hours. So we called taxi, what is usual advice in this situation. But in taxi we discovered that time is different scale for our child. And taxi driver, very nice young man who arrived probably a few years before from India, was completely shocked. Because here in Canada, they are responsible to give you first assistance in case something happens in their car. It's part of license. So he asked me, can we go on a red light near hospital because you better go to hospital. I said no, in front of hospital to have accident, it's another issue. But yes, why we couldn't call ambulance in the case it's obviously needed. And it affects whole issues related to sustainable development. We speak about future generation, but we don't give our future generation even extra time to arrive here. And if your child, lucky enough, is healthy, they will dismiss you from hospital in 24 hours. Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add here, because this is very critical. When I had my baby, I was told that told that come when you are just ready. But lucky for me, I went there and they had a bed, and I had, my baby was, not head down, feet down. So that's a complete different situation. And with the umbilical cord around the neck. So if I had to say this is not the right time, I don't know. And if they didn't have to take me in, I don't know. So this is really something I feel about. I'm getting goosebumps now because I've been through it. And it's not as simple as it seems to everyone to tell you your baby is healthy, get up and start walking out now. And after all that trauma, I was told, okay, but you're fine, your baby saved, everything, just get up and get out now. And it disturbs you a lot, yeah. Before I could even take my baby to my chest and anything, I was told, just get up and go. And I was forced to get up out of that whole thing, come conscious now, get up and let's go. And that's very, very sad.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story. And it's very important for us to see implication of higher level decision in our everyday life. And at the time we arrived to North York Hospital, we discovered really huge crowd of pregnant women around. What happened? Unfortunately for us at that moment, in January 2012, it was some kind of scandal with one of hospitals in Scarborough, because baby of the year, everybody is happy to see picture of baby of the year, because somebody who born exactly on the 1st of January, they get their pictures everywhere in local newspaper. So baby of the year, because of lack of care, died few days after. And people were really scared to go to Scarborough Hospital. So everybody went to closest one, and closest in this case was North York. So we spent almost like 8 hours waiting for a doctor to see my wife for 10 minutes. It was good enough, of course, but could we afford a little bit more attention? It's not only about nice room. Hospitals here are excellent. I don't speak about prices for your parking lot. Yeah, but you know, it's all about people. It's not about walls. And somehow it's overlooked. And it's again all about future generations. So start to think how future generations are born here. It's a good topic to address. And you have a lot of work with all sustainable development goals for next, let's say for next generation.